Modifying family lawyer compensation is fraught with communication challenges and potholes that can significantly erode trust with your team in a real hurry. There are unlimited ways this can go wrong, and you can totally blow up your law firm if you don't proceed carefully. My name is Jeff Hughes, and I'm the CEO of Sterling Lawyers. We are a 25-plus family law firm doing over $15 million in revenue, and I document what's working and what's not working with hopes that you can take it, recontextualize it, and build the family law practice of your dream. This video is part 2 of a series on changing lawyer compensation within a law firm. And my guest is Katie VanDeusen. She is one of our managing partners. She's a terrific leader. And I've got here with me today to talk about how she navigated through a compensation change with our lawyers back in 24 that we implemented here at the beginning of 25. So Katie was ground zero through the entire year-long process and was one of the primary communicators with our team to get this done. In the last half of this video, I will be interviewing Nina Kelly. She's one of our partners, and get her perspective on what it felt like, what the experience was like as an attorney, really on their quote, receiving end of a compensation change. So welcome, Katie.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Thanks for coming back on the show. And I asked you to come on and talk about your experience as you navigated the legal team through a compensation change last year. That was a year-long plus process, and you were front and center through the whole thing. And you were responsible, you along with Holly, our other managing partner, were responsible for communicating with the team at various points along the whole process. So I wanted to dig into that and just ask you if you could tell the story and share how you did it and how you did it so exceedingly well with our team. Because whenever you change and modify compensation, that is an area that you can completely lose all trust with your team if you don't do it well, if you're dealing with their compensation. And you and Holly and the team did that exceptionally well. So if you can, take us back to the beginning of the year when this issue came up. I know it was on your year-long goal plan to make the change, and just kind of walk us through how you did that so well.
Well, first of all, thank you. I would tell you, I totally appreciate what you said. Whenever you're working with compensation or people's compensation, it's always a sensitive topic, and you have to keep that top of mind when you're interacting with people. And I think one thing that I would just stress is you always try to provide support and comfort to them because any change, whether it's even good or bad, is just sometimes viewed either skeptically or people are just scared. It creates fear. So going back in time, I think it really was a lot of meetings and hours upon hours of trying to review what the best plan was with regard to compensation. What we had previously was just not working. We were under a PG model, and I felt strongly that that compensation structure was just not in the firm's best interest overall.
You weren't here for the interview I did with Jeff Curlin about this topic. So let me just set context for you and anyone who else wasn't there. We had, coming out of 22, a compensation model that really, in all candor, I pushed through kind of in the 11th hour without proper spade work to get this done right. And we called this the partner group model. And so when you say PJ, you're referring to the partner group model, and you didn't love aspects of that, as well as many others on the team. So I covered that with much more detail in the video number 1 in this series. So just giving you context, picking up right there, you didn't love parts of it, and you were tasked along with Holly to change it.
Correct. And so it was a lot of hours of research, poring over different approaches or different types of models, what would work best for not only the legal team and the attorneys, and maximizing what we can give to them, but also understanding that the firm has a budget and there's only so much to go around. So we coordinated, Holly and I, with both Todd, our CFO, as well as Jeff Curlin, who you referenced before. And we also brought in outside contractor to kind of speak openly about concerns, vetting different issues, different approaches. And It took a lot of time and effort, but we finally came up with this draft of what we felt would be ready to share with the attorneys and the legal team.
And about how many months into the process was it got to that first draft?
I would honestly say several. It was not a quick draft that was created. We had several meetings over months of time. I know Todd worked a lot on different spreadsheets, adjusting different percentages, making sure we wanted to see where were people at previously and what did we feel we could maximize again for the legal team, while also taking into account, the firm's budget and it being a business as well at the end of the day. Once we got this draft somewhat finalized, Holly and I scheduled individual meetings with each one of the attorneys to solicit feedback. And we showed them our draft and asked them to be very candid with feedback to us if they felt there were certain areas that we could improve or modify. No promises were made clearly. We made it very clear to the attorneys, that we still had certain parameters that we had to meet as a leadership team, but we really left it open to them to give us feedback. And so we met with each of the individual attorneys together and solicited that feedback from them. We then took that back to the team we were working with on the comp structure or the comp change. We did implement some of the feedback that we received from the attorneys. There were some commonalities in the meetings that we felt strongly about, and we communicated that back to the team. And then Todd took that and attempted to work that into a second draft or a revised draft. And the overall structure that we came to was finalized, and we created a lot of supporting documents to help the attorneys not only understand the new comp structure, but visualize it as well. I think that was really important. We relied on team growth, Robin Esch's team, to do that. Yeah. And after we finalized this draft, we then set up a group meeting with all of the attorneys that Holly and I presented a final draft of the compensation plan to. Again, we solicited additional feedback from them. And then we also followed up after that kind of rollout meeting to schedule additional meetings one-on-one with each one of the attorneys to ensure that they fully understood it. If they had any questions, we addressed those questions during those follow-up meetings. And so it really was a ton of work, but I'm very proud of what we came up with. I feel very strongly that it is the comp model that I feel very passionate about, and that it's in everyone's best interest, not only the attorneys, but also the firm in general.
In all fairness, it didn't land on everybody the same way. So you did have some real challenging conversations to work through there. So let me just double tap and back up a little bit, because I think the communication approach that you took made all the difference in this working so well. So I want to amplify a little bit of what you did, because there's some best practices that you executed on that are really worth everyone catching. So I'm going to take you back to when you got the first draft of it done. Now, this has been months of conversation and vetting, numerous spreadsheets by Todd, our CFO. You had this first draft. And then I know that you went out and solicited some feedback from some of our key teammates on the legal team. What was that? Just that segment of the communication, what was that like?
So it was a meeting between Holly and I and the individual attorney. We shared our, specific draft calculator showing the attorney where were they at the prior year, what the comp structure would look like, and how it would individually apply to them and their compensation. So we walked through each one of the attorneys. We showed them this calculator and walked through it with them. We reviewed the percentages based on their collections and projected out what they would earn under the new comp model if applied to them, and if their collections and performance stayed somewhat similar from 2024 moving into 2025. Then really just open it up to ask them questions. During those meetings, we also had what we referenced as a one-pager, which was really a breakdown high level of the new comp model. And it broke down each one of the attorneys' roles within the firm or their title designation and what their collections would be based on that. And it really was a great visual to use so that the attorneys could visualize that. And then we opened it up to them. They really kind of took it from there and, were very open with us. And I think that's also one thing I would mention is having team members feel comfortable enough to talk openly about those things, because it is a very sensitive topic. And sometimes certain individuals may feel comfortable doing that or maybe not as comfortable. So I think the mixture of meeting not only individually with each one of the attorneys, but also in a group setting really helped in that, because not everyone's going to want to talk in a group setting about something that's sensitive like that.
Right. Well, hello, Jeff here. My team and I put out a weekly newsletter designed for family law practitioners to help you grow and build your practice. So if you go to my website at jsterlinghughes.com, that's Hughes, that's jsterlinghughes.com, and subscribe, it would mean the world to me. And what I will do for you there is I will send you weekly content to help you build and grow your practice, as well as news and developments in the greater world of family law. Thank you, and back to the show. So in these one-on-one meetings, you laid out how the proposed plan would affect the attorneys, so they had a chance to have a safe environment without other eyes watching to ask these questions, right? And did you have a one-on-one meeting with every attorney prior to finalizing that last draft?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, wow, okay. You did that, and then you had a full group meeting where you walked them through the final draft of what it would look like, right?
Yep. And that final draft incorporated some of their feedback that we solicited from them during those one-on-one meetings.
Okay. So no one was surprised at that last meeting because they already had a one-on-one with you. They knew what it would be like coming in. And so you don't want a situation where you're presenting compensation to a whole group of lawyers all at one time and it's a shocker to some of them. That would be a very dreadful situation.
Absolutely agreed.
So how did that meeting go? Did you get any, negative feedback, questioning feedback in the group setting?
Not that I can recall. I honestly feel like people were very open with regard to having seen a draft before and the changes that were coming. During the one-on-one meetings, we also provided context as to what our PG model was and what issues existed and why we had to do what we were doing. Yeah. So I honestly feel when we got to the group meeting with all of the attorneys, it didn't feel like there was negativity. I think it was received positively. And I think that they also felt comfortable sharing feedback. And we did our best to incorporate everything we could, honestly, so that they felt like we really were trying to do everything that we could in that instance. So for example, during some of the one-on-ones, there was feedback that personal referral percentages should almost be a graduated schedule or, a graded percentage based on experience level and the attorney's role at the firm. And that was something that Holly and I felt very strongly about and, implemented in a final revised version. So I hope that the attorneys felt heard in those instances and that we implemented everything we could on their behalf and that there was trust there with regards to that process.
Yeah. I want to highlight something here because, I sit in the CEO position and I started the firm and I trusted you, Holly and Todd and Robin and Jeff and the whole team to execute on this. And you guys did an incredible job. And what this really illustrates is a challenge that I had. So I really liked our PG model. I pushed it. I wanted it, right? You're laughing because you know how much I liked it. And I felt like this was the best type of plan we could have to scale and grow the firm going forward. There was one big problem with that plan is that it wasn't widely loved at the same level with the team who was actually living under the plan. And so by the very nature of that fact, it wasn't the right plan for our firm. And so you and the team worked through something that you could get everyone behind and get everyone excited about and get buy-in. That was different than I wanted, but it turned out to be the right thing for our firm. So the lesson there is a lot of them, right? But trusting your team, delegating to really good leaders and smart people, letting them do their thing. And I don't think I had any conversations with you, maybe one, through the entire year about this plan.
Yeah, I would agree. And I will also say not every single individual was happy with the change. But one thing that I kept circling back to is we needed something that was clear, easy to understand, transparent, and concise. And going back to really putting an emphasis on individual performance and drive, that was something that I felt very strongly about. And I felt like the team members who I had, direct contact with felt strongly about what we were operating in. There are pros and cons to everything. And I definitely think of course, there were pros to the PG model, but I feel like with this new comp plan, the pros that exist vastly outweigh the cons, whereas I did not feel that way with the PG model. And there are still people that I think really enjoyed that model, benefited from that model, but I think overall, looking at it from the firm standpoint, this compensation structure is much better, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think that's absolutely true. Our lawyers are the lifeblood of the firm, right? They're the team that makes things really go. It's not going to be 100%, but there needs to be buy-in from the great majority of those. In fairness, though, Katie, there were a few attorneys that this felt disproportionately negative on them, and they understood it, though. They accepted it. They endorsed it at the end of the day, in part because of your communication with them, giving them time to adjust and talk it through, and they felt heard. They felt really genuinely heard as to some of their objections, and we did everything we could to accommodate them. We've got our agenda is the entire team, right? We can't focus on Jeff's agenda or individuals, Jeff Hughes' agenda. We have so many Jeffs on our team. So, I'm going to get questions as to what this plan looks like, how you finalized it. I just want to point out to everyone that this entire plan has been put into a document and is available for anyone to look at, copy, to see how it works by going to my website, which is a family law resource website at jsterlinghughes.com. Go to the resources tab, downloads, and you'll find this there. You'll see the handiwork that the team put into it. So, Katie, before we go, any last minute best practices that you want to share or can share with our listeners as they may be going through this in their firm?
I would say do your best to make your team feel safe and heard. You can't always please everyone or accommodate everyone, but what you can do is you can listen to them and try to implement feedback in a meaningful way that works for everyone. And a lot of the time, if those individuals feel heard and supported, they're going to receive things in a much better mindset with that buy-in. So that would be my last, best practice or tip or trick that I've got up my sleeve, but that's about it.
Well said. Thank you. And thank you for coming on and giving us some time today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, my next guest is Nina Kelly. Nina is one of our partners on our Illinois team. She is a mother of two and a stepmom to three, and she is an incredibly high performer on our team. And she was with us through our compensation change back in 22 and again in 24. And Nina, I've asked you to come on the show today and talk about what it was like from your experience being on the quote receiving end of a compensation change. I'd like you to reflect with authenticity, okay, on how the leadership team did, how Katie did. I know Katie's your direct supervisor, but she's game for this too, on what it felt like, things that went well, things that didn't go well, and just whatever best practice advice you have to share with other attorneys that are maybe looking at compensation changes within their law practice?
I think as far as the first one, it was obviously harder because for a lot of people, it at least appeared that the compensation was going to go down as far as what you assumed it might be. But I think the firm did a really nice job of actually showing why that might not be the case. Well, first of all, saying why it was necessary, right? Why the compensation was being changed. It was for the health of the firm or whatever it was. And I think it was important that the firm highlighted like this was so that the firm could remain healthy, right? Because it's rather have some compensation than no compensation. But then I think even though the first time it was actually a pretty drastic decrease as like percentage wise, I
thought
a
percentage of collections, you're saying?
Decrease of percentage of collections, right? Yeah. Because of other things the firm was doing and other efficiencies and everything, I think though the spreadsheets that you kind of had that you personalized for everyone showing what they could be earning even under the new plan was really reassuring. And it kind of showed that, yeah, we're changing it. It might seem like you're going to be, making less as a percentage, but really here's why it's changing, where it's changing, and where you'll probably be, which really wasn't less than before, or in some cases maybe it was, but it wasn't that drastic. There was also a clear path how to make even more than before, right? I think that was another really important thing, is that there's not a ceiling, especially the first time, how clear the firm was with individual kind of like the spreadsheets or tailoring it to the individual as far as what it's going to look like, how it's going to affect you, what you can do to kind of have some control over it. Everything like that was really reassuring despite it not being in what people might consider like good news.
Yeah. You were there through 22 and then we implemented that in 23 and then we saw some holes in the plan. A lot of it wasn't working the way we intended. So we went into 24, and from your experience, I know you weren't in all the early meetings, right? You were practicing doing your thing.
Right.
What was it like from your point of view?
I kind of got some whisperings because we were kind of in a committee. We kind of knew there was going to be a change. And what I think was really helpful was that it was not a guarantee, but kind of, it was like, hey, this isn't going to be a negative change. Mm-hmm. So nobody was, I think the first time around, people were a little bit more just like cautious and like nervous about the change. But this most recent change, it was almost clear that like, hey, you're either going to be where you're at or it's going to be more. So even though we didn't have specifics, the fact that that was kind of put out there from the beginning, and again, not a guarantee, but it was almost reassurance. It's like, hey, there's nothing to be worried about type of thing was the message that was getting across, even though I don't think the firm was ready to kind of announce details yet, was really helpful. And then I think the timing was good. I think we had a couple months notice. The date was really clear. And what I think was really important was when there was a discrepancy, because I kind of knew at this comp change we just had, like the January numbers, because that's when the change took effect, were going to be an absolute mess because of the different trigger. I was just like, it's going to be an accounting nightmare. And I think, again, I'm not privy to anything special, but I'm just assuming when the meetings happened, being like, wow, are we going to do all this? The fact that the firm erred in benefiting the attorneys, it showed a lot of respect for attorneys and kind of, made up for any uncertainty that was there before. I kind of thought that was a really good gesture of the firm to do too.
Yeah. How was the communication through the process?
I thought it was really good. I mean, again, I liked that we kind of had a note, like some sort of notice that something was coming. So it wasn't like a total shock, even though I don't think the details were smoothed out. But I think we had a couple months. When was that meeting? Maybe November or something, that this is going to happen. And it was a very clear timeline of when it's happening, what it's going to be. I think people made themselves really available. And they still are, as far as going over specifics, what it's going to look like. There was a lot of clarity about what it was going to be. And then again, I just got an individual type spreadsheet of numbers for what my numbers look like.
Yeah.
And people from billing, Katie, my personal manager, I mean, everybody's reaching out saying, hey, if you need a meeting, let me know. So it's not like anybody's left with questions that are going unanswered.
Yeah. So as you reflect back on the year, what would be some best practices you would encourage or just advise any other attorney or law firm going through a comp change?
So I would say, don't do it hastily. I'm going back, but I remember when we were going to do the original comp change and you realized it wasn't right? Yeah. And so you took your foot off the gas and you kind of you changed it again. I think do it thoughtfully, but also just giving people a notice that something's coming, so it's not totally blindsided when it's going to be a major change. And then some sort of assurance of, Don't say, hey, there's a comp change and then go totally silent, right? Say there's a comp change, but you're not going to be affected that much, or you're only going to be affected in a good way, or, give some sort of secondary assurance and then give at least an adequate time notice before it actually takes effect.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing this perspective. I wanted to get all 3 points of view and share those with our audience. So thanks for coming on today and sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
If you found this video helpful, then you are definitely going to want to watch this video here that I did with Katie on how to build a high-performing family law team.